stuttering. Huh? Okay. A little while later, they both reached the audition spot. The stage was already buzzing with a crowd eager to watch. Right now, a tall, dark-haired guy is on stage. But honestly, his instrument sounds worse than a duck quacking in a thunderstorm. Came a voice from the audience. Ouch. That comment made Louis's ears hurt so badly. He nearly spat out blood. He turned to his sister and said awkwardly, "Sis, why does everyone play so poorly?" Lucia placed a hand on her forehead and sheepishly replied, "It's only the preliminaries. Trust me. There are plenty of talented folks in the finals." Louis crossed his arms with a smirk, declaring, "I bet you play way better than them, Lucia." But suddenly, Lucia's face fell, looking glum. Noticing this, he spun around, grabbed her hand, and urged, "This isn't good. Sis, you've got to come up there with me." Lucia, surprised by his sudden pull, gasped. "What?" He brushed off her reaction and continued to tug her along. "Come on, quick. Sis, let's go," she exclaimed anxiously as he dragged her along. Wait. Luis." They arrived in front of a stout man, who appeared to be the conductor for the evening's festivities. Upon their sudden arrival, he said, "Whoa there, who are you kids? You need to sign up beforehand to join this event." Luis stepped forward promptly and whispered in his ear, "I registered as Luis and Lucia. Check the list for our names, please." But as soon as he finished, the man stepped back in shock, exclaiming, "What, Lucia? You mean Lucia from Sean, down in the audience?" Whispers erupted. "What? Lucia from Sean? Is it really her?" "It actually is Lucia, but didn't she stop singing lately?" "I think so. Rumor has it she quit after that incident." Lucia wobbled a bit and began to breathe heavily at those words, feeling like the air around her was tightening, suffocating her. Asterisk gasp. 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 Asterisk. She turned to flee, but suddenly froze. She wobbled on her feet and began to pant when those words hit her, feeling as though the air was strangling her, leaving her breathless. Asterisk. Gasp. 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 Asterisk. She spun around to escape. Suddenly, she froze, caught in her tracks. Turning around, Lucia saw Luis looking at her seriously. He flashed a smile and said, "Don't fret. I'll handle the singing. You just focus on playing the instrument." Her eyes widened in surprise at his audacity as she gasped. "What?" Luis extended his hand, waiting for Lucia, who was clutching the instrument, to agree. He took the instrument from her and enthusiastically said, "Relax. I'll be the singer. You just play along." Stunned, Lucia held the instrument, her mind racing, and said nervously, "What did you just say?" But as she stumbled on her words, the conductor approached them, nervously asking, "What did you say?" Just then, the conductor approached and inquired, "Are you all set yet? If you need a bit more time, we can postpone till later." Lucia stammered in response. About that." Lost for words, Luis suddenly leaped onto the stage, claiming the spotlight from a tall, burly guy. Annoyed, the guy muttered to himself, "I wasn't finished with my performance." Then he raised his hand and shouted, "Hello to the wonderful folks of Sean. I'm Luis, a guest of Sean." Glancing at the tall guy, he continued, "You've all suffered through an unprofessional performance, haven't you? You must be exhausted, right?" This only riled the young man further. He thought, "This little punk has zero respect for art." Then Luis pointed down to where Lucia stood and carried on. "You must be worn out, right?" Hearing this, the young man grew even more agitated. He thought, "This little brat has zero appreciation for art." Then, Luis pointed at Lucia and continued, "Now, let's welcome Miss Lucia to the stage to lighten this atmosphere." Hearing her name called out, anxiety bubbled up inside her. Still, she took slow, shaky steps towards the stage, clutching the instrument tightly as she approached Luis. The crowd below erupted in cheers, making Lucia even more frightened. So much so that she bowed her head and hid her face in her hands, trembling all over. Gathering her courage, she looked up and said to him, "Luis, I can't do this." Upon hearing her, Luis's eyes grew wide as he gazed at Lucia. He extended his hand and said, "Take my hand." Lucia, puzzled, responded, "Huh? Why should I?" As he grasped her hand, he shut his eyes and summoned his magic. It was the divine power of the mind. "Everything will turn out okay." Lucia's eyes grew wide in surprise. Luis took both her hands in his, and she thought to herself, "What is happening?" But somehow, holding Luis's hand is making me feel calmer. Noticing how she embraced his magic, he winked at her. "Everything will be all right. So don't fret. Okay?" After processing his words, she let out a breath, closed her eyes, and replied, "Yeah, I understand. Thanks for the pep talk, Luis." Once she finished, the conductor brought over a chair for Lucia to sit on and prepare to play. You can choose any song you want. I'll handle the accompaniment. Luis responded. Absolutely, ma'am. Then he turned to the audience and proclaimed, All right. I've kept you waiting long enough. Now, please enjoy my singing. But as he said that, the audience looked let down, muttering, Huh? It's not Lucia singing. But this little kid, what's happening? Even though the kid was adorable, folks were questioning what a child like him could possibly sing. He sighed, brushing aside the chatter before looking down at the audience. Then, with arms outstretched, he began to sing. Ah! The moment Luis's voice filled the air, the audience was captivated, listening in admiration and exclaiming, What is this? His voice is incredible. In my entire life, I've never heard such a pure, soaring voice. Though murmurs still swirled, he continued to sing. His voice conveyed a bittersweet melody, a sorrow so well-balanced. He carried deep melancholy too, a grief that could fill a ship's hull. Suddenly, someone in the crowd began to sob. It's so sad. Really sad. Even though it's heartbreaking and wraps around my heart like a vice. Simultaneously, I feel liberated. On stage, Luis motioned to Lucia, his eyes saying, Sister, it's your moment. Startled, she quickly placed her hands on the instrument and started to play the opening notes. After so many years, he was still lost in his song. The heavens sent a breeze that ruffled a cuckoo's wings, each step a testament to struggle. One cries out, endlessly, while another covers their ears and sleeps peacefully. It's okay if you're indifferent. It's okay if you never come back to me. I'd rather be a magpie bridge than face separation through life and death. At this moment, the crowd below could no longer hold back their feelings. Cheers and screams erupted from everywhere. Just like that. One voice sang and one played, the unison of song and music tugging at everyone's emotions. The conductor, witnessing this spectacle, was so astonished that the stack of papers he was holding clattered to the ground. Moments later, once their performance wrapped up, the crowd below stood in awe, as though they couldn't quite process what they had just experienced. Everyone remained frozen, looking perplexed, but not Luis, who wore a radiant smile. Then, in perfect harmony, they all shouted, Incredible! One more tune. He waved at the audience, beaming. Thank you. Thank you. Everyone. Luis felt an even greater surge of pride and excitement, thinking, Folks, this is the magic of music from that day. Lucia, however, sat there in a daze, her brow furrowed in deep thought. Luis called out loudly, Thanks a bunch. Yet she remained seated, trapped in her silent musings. After the show, the night grew late and bright. A canvas of twinkling stars emerged overhead. The crowd filtered back from the festival to the inn, and Louise plopped down in a chair, looking drained, exclaiming, Wow, I'm totally wiped out. Singing is no walk in the park. Is it? Mono approached, playfully tousling his hair while grinning. Louise, you rocked it today. How do you sing so fantastically? Flattered, Louise puffed up proudly and replied, My fans simply couldn't take their eyes off me. Right? The two kids gazed at him in sheer admiration, as if he were their idol. Their eyes gleamed as they exclaimed, Luis is awesome. The joyful scene took a turn when Lucia addressed Mono. Sister, I apologize. I'm feeling a bit beat, so I think I'm going to go rest. With that, she began ascending the stairs. Mono heard her and turned her head to respond. Oh. All right. You go take it easy. Mona watched Lucia depart with a concerned expression. Suddenly, she called out, Lucia. A moment later, in Lucia's room, she lay on her bed when a voice from outside declared, Lucia, I'm coming in. Lucia stayed silent, facing the wall, not uttering a word. It was Mono, worried about her. Mono sat on the edge of Lucia's bed, asking, How are you feeling today? She cheerfully added, You enjoyed it, right? But Lucia, still turned away, replied briefly, Yes, I did like it. Mono smiled and said, That's a relief. It's been ages since I've seen you up there, so I loved it too. While talking, Lucia suddenly shot upright, looking at Mono with concern. Sister, you don't hate me, do you? Taken aback, Mono replied, Me? Why on earth would I? That's when Lucia couldn't hold back her emotions any longer, tears streaming down her face. Because of me. Because of me. Our parents. Before Lucia could finish her thought, Mono gently tapped her on the head and exclaimed, Will you quit with this nonsense? The sudden jolt made Lucia cry out. Ah, I've told you countless times. It wasn't your fault. Our parents chose to protect the one they loved most, and I love you more than anything in this world. Just like they did. So please don't talk like that anymore. Stunned by Mono's words, the sisters embraced and wept. Mono continued through her tears. I won't rush you to sing again right away. Just keep taking the stage little by little, like you did today. One day, you'll find your voice again, just like you used to, right? Our voices are at their finest when we sing together, aren't they? Hearing this, Lucia sobbed harder than she ever had before. Indeed, sister, just outside the door, Louise had been eavesdropping, chuckling to himself. Ha! I've gone and done it again, he snapped his fingers while striding back to his room, cheerfully declaring, Step 1. A total triumph. But once he flung his room door open, shock washed over him. Huh? He gasped at the sight ahead, shouting, Finn, you're hurt. You're collapsed on the floor. Your body covered in wounds. She trembled as she gasped out. Gasp, gasp, Moss, master. Alarmed, he rushed to her, scooping her up in his arms and anxiously asking, What happened? Why are you so badly injured? Finn struggled to catch her breath, stammering, That thing. The guy from the warehouse on the west side of the port. Before she could finish, she succumbed to unconsciousness in Louis' embrace. Panicking, he hollered, Finn, wake up. Desperation dripped from his voice, as if he couldn't believe the sight before him. Scene change. A warehouse materialized with lights blazing. Ballo hastily kicked the door open, fury etched on his face. The startled guards on duty shrieked, What? Who the heck are you? He ignored their inquiries, standing with his hands on his hips, declaring, Well, I was pondering where all Luther's elixirs vanished to, and behold, it's all right here. The white-haired lackey played dumb upon hearing this, inquiring, What the heck are you talking about? We didn't. As soon as he finished speaking, Ballo lunged forward, seizing him by the collar, lifting him off the ground with a fierce glare. I'm aware of everything happening here. While I'm still being nice, you'd better spill it. Terrified, the white-haired man feigned ignorance, asking, Huh? What do you mean? Just then, a footfall echoed behind him, and a voice said, I'd appreciate it if you'd release my subordinate. It turned out to be none other than Daimon. He continued, Though I'm unsure why you're here, Sir Ballo. Let's talk first. Perhaps we can clear up this misunderstanding. After hearing that, Ballo tossed aside the subordinate he had grabbed and turned back to Daimon, saying, Usually, it's the ones with bad intentions who want to chat. Nevertheless, Ballo pointed towards the stack of barrels, then faced Daimon, asking, Now, explain why you're stashing all this spirit medicine in this warehouse. His expression darkened as he warned, Don't tell me you're planning some secret plot. At Ballo's words, Daimon remained unruffled, grinning as he replied, I'm not following your train of thought, sir. He then smugly gestured towards the barrels and stated, These barrels of spirit medicine are legitimate goods set for export to the Autumn continent. I have no idea where you got that tale. But surely there's been a mix-up, right? Ballo countered, without hesitation. Is that so? In that case, you wouldn't mind me searching the warehouse, would you? He maintained a relaxed demeanor. If that's what you wish, that was all Ballo needed to hear. Without wasting a moment, he seized his massive hammer and barreled towards the door, kicking it open to reveal a staircase descending. This was the very place Finn had visited before trouble found her. Once he arrived at the bottom, this was the spot Finn visited before he got into hot water. Once he reached the bottom, he paused, scanning the area before inquiring, What is this place? Just as he was about to explore more, Damon and his two minions appeared. He commented, I heard this is where they constructed small fishing boats when Jen was still a fishing village. Dean confidently crossed his arms and declared, Nowadays, we occasionally use it for transporting supplies. But he was skeptical, replying, From what I'm seeing, this place is definitely hiding something. Ballo clutched the hammer tightly, as if getting ready to toss it. Suddenly, he flung the hammer sharply to the left. In an instant, the hammer zipped away like a speeding arrow as he shouted, Spirit object. The hammer soared into the dark tunnel. Worry began to creep in, causing sweat to cascade down his face. However, after the hammer had been flying for a bit, silence remained. Seeing this, Ballo was taken aback, sweat pouring down as he exclaimed, Darn it, why isn't there any response? Demon, witnessing this, remarked to Ballo, You see, sir, didn't I say there was nothing here? Meanwhile, he still couldn't accept it, saying, No way, it can't be. Ballo, feeling anger rise, seized the torch from a subordinate and said, I'll check it out myself. Diamond and his two lackeys trailed behind him. As they walked, he remarked, You seem more stubborn than you appear, sir. After walking for a bit, they hit a dead end with a solid wall blocking their path. Ballo, even more perplexed, questioned, Is there truly nothing here? Meanwhile, D-Man, feeling a surge of confidence, stepped forward triumphantly and proclaimed, I told you there was nothing here. He continued with a sneer, If you keep making things tough for me, I might not just sit back and do nothing. Mr. Balo. At this moment, having found nothing, he was left speechless. He could only shut his eyes, let out a sigh, and surrender. Moments later, they all exited the warehouse. Luis was already waiting there, spotting Balo. He pretended to wave and called out, "Hey, uncle, what brings you here?" He waved again and said, "Mona is looking for you. You haven't snuck off for a drink again, have you?" After this, Balo approached Luis and whispered, "I went down the tunnel like you suggested, but there was nothing there." Luis responded, "Looks like we've relocated. I'll take care of this. Stand back." With that, Luiso stepped up and said, "Hello, sir. We've met before. You mentioned your name was Don, correct?" The man asked with intrigue. "You're Luiso?" He put on a phony grin and replied, "I'm Luiso, staying at the Shan Inn with Uncle Balo." Hearing this, the subordinate with white hair chimed in, "Boss, that's the kid I mentioned from the night of the pageant." The man seemed to recall and remarked, "Ah, got it." Don moved closer, leaning down towards him with a wide grin. "Ah, you're the kid who performed with Lucia on stage, right? I heard you have quite the singing talent." Luiso chuckled and responded, "Hee, yes, that's me," flashing his bright white teeth. Yet, it didn't convey friendliness, as if he was concealing something sinister. "Convincing Lucia to perform isn't easy. You've got some skills. Huh, kid?" Duiman leaned in even closer, still smiling as he talked to Luis. "So, do you think you could persuade your uncle for me?" Luis looked back, puzzled. Duiman leaned in closer, still smiling as he spoke to Luis. "So, are you able to convince your uncle for me?" Luis asked in confusion. "Convince him of what? Exactly?" Duiman snarled menacingly, his voice dripping with threat. Cornering someone without proof can lead to a swift demise, just like what happened to Lucia's parents. At these chilling words, Balo exploded with fury, ready to lung at the man, shouting, "What did you just say? You filthy scoundrel?" Observing this, Luiso quickly raised his hand to halt him, saying, "My uncle's a straightforward guy. He tends to act impulsively. I'll make every effort to persuade him," the man responded, satisfaction gleaming in his eyes. "Excellent. You're fortunate to be such a sensible kid." Suddenly, Luiso spotted something behind Diamond and pondered about it. He gazed at the man and seized the chance to inquire, "But sir, can I ask you something?" Don appeared, taken aback, then glanced at Luiso and replied, "What is it?" "Quick on the recovery. The horn clipped onto your belt. What's its purpose?" The man's demeanor darkened as he asked, "Why the sudden curiosity?" He flashed a casual smile and said, "It looks really cool. I want one for myself." The man seemed visibly alarmed, breaking out into a cold sweat. "They're not easy to come by. Very tricky to acquire. Well, we must be leaving now." With that, he and his two henchmen retreated into the warehouse and slammed the door behind them, leaving the duo standing in a daze. Balo questioned, "Master, what's our next move?" "First, I'm telling Seiwu," Luiso countered. "No," he continued somberly. "If Seiyu gets involved now, it could spark a war in this city. Countless innocent lives may be at stake." He looked at Balo once more and added, "More importantly, we can't allow this to overshadow Lucia's comeback." "Can we?" he asked, puzzled. "What comeback are you talking about?" "Yeah. I initially thought we had more time, but at this rate, we need to ramp things up." Luiso grinned, saying, "This is going to be the liveliest festival ever." Inside the warehouse, the white-haired subordinate was yanked by his collar and slammed against the wall. Dweeman shouted angrily, "Even that mild-mannered Balo is suddenly acting out. How have you lot been running this warehouse?" The terrified white-haired subordinate stammered, "Boss, I really don't know." This response only fueled Dweeman's rage. "Oh, is that right? It truly sucks that you're so clueless." With that, he grabbed a small sword and stabbed the white-haired subordinate. The man gasped in pain as blood spilled everywhere. Instantly, the subordinate crumpled in agony. Gurgle coldly turned his back and strode away, instructing the other brown-haired subordinate, "At this point, we need to step up our game." At that moment, the brown-haired subordinate, who had witnessed the brutal scene, murmured in fear, "Step up? But we still haven't trained it properly." He then drew out the bloody weapon, scrutinizing it, and added, "There isn't any more time for doubt now. That Balo is already on to us, so we need to move before he finds us. I'll handle him at the perfect moment during the grand finale of the beauty pageant." The brown-haired man's face turned ghostly pale, sweat cascading down him. Finally, he echoed a phrase just like Luiso. "This festival is going to be absolutely wild." As night descended, the starry sky sparkled above. The next evening, Luiso and Balo strolled along the harbor road, on the hunt for something important. While walking, Balo inquired, "Master, Even if we turned this place upside down, finding any sign of that sea monster would be a tough task. Louis So responded, Exactly. When you're on the verge of getting caught, do you believe you can just sit around? His gaze sharpened as he pondered. And if his aim was to take down Tor Usher, after stirring up trouble during the festival, he'd put on quite a performance by capturing the monster himself. That would be the perfect chance to wow the Lord. Balo, confused, asked, if he wants to do that, he must be able to control the sea monster. Right? Does that mean Yun is just like Jacob? A druid? Louis So shook his head. No. He isn't a druid because I can't sense any spiritual energy from him. He then added with a grin. But he does possess a rather impressive item. Louis So recalled what Yuman carried. The Horn of the Dragon King. According to tales, the Horn of the Dragon King was made from the horn of a sea dragon. Louis imagined a sea monster under the horn's command. If one could tame the sea monster with the Dragon King's horn, they'd have the power to direct it at will. That priceless artifact was always in Yimon's possession. Louis So thought to himself, even though he had no clue where Yimon found that treasure. Simply owning that item would suffice to control the sea monster effortlessly, even without being a druid. He rubbed his hands together, a mischievous grin on his face, thinking, that thing looks pretty pricey. What Louis So said next was, if we could snatch that horn from him, couldn't we drastically cut down our travel time to the autumn continent? At this, Balo closed his eyes and sighed, reflecting on, isn't that your true goal anyway, Master? Then Louis So pointed at him and continued, anyway, that guy is undoubtedly making his move tonight, so, I need you to keep an eye on the harbor non-stop. Balo asked in astonishment. Me? All by myself? Master, where are you headed? He replied. I have something I need to take care of first. A little later, Luis ventured alone to the town center, which was extravagantly decorated. As the crowd gathered and mingled, Luis suddenly spotted a familiar figure lurking near a window in the distance. Approaching closer, he called out, Hey there, now standing behind Kaj, asking, with a curious look, What are you doing hiding there, Kaj? The son of Baron Trior Usher jumped in surprise at the sound of Louis So's voice, caught in the act. The flustered man stumbled through his explanation. No. I was just taking a walk. It's been ages since Lucia performed, so I came to show her my support. Listening to this and watching the man fluster, Louis froze, appearing highly suspicious to anyone observing. Louis sighed and replied, Even so, your head isn't totally empty, right? I figured you'd have those sorts of twisted ideas. Hearing this, Kaj got angry immediately, exclaiming, What, seriously? He then added, Just the timing I needed. I have a job for you today. During the event, you have to fill the square with a crowd. Kaj, baffled, asked, Fill it with a crowd? Why on earth would I do that? Luis replied. Stop asking questions. Just follow my instructions. That comment really seemed to hit a nerve with the great young master. So, Kaj yelled, Hard work? All I need is to rally my household, and that'll definitely pack the square. Realizing he'd taken the bait, Luis turned away, grinned, and added, Perfect. See you later. Suddenly he paused and said, Oh wait. Don't forget to bring flowers when you come. Gotta make a great impression when it matters. Hearing this, Kaj was puzzled and rested his chin on his hand, pondering and muttering. When it matters, the night sky was calm, but the scene below was anything but serene. As the performance time drew near, more and more spectators filled the square, especially around the festival stage where Lucia and Louise were nearing. Lucia tightly gripped her instrument, spotting the crowd. She felt anxious and whispered, Wow, there are so many people. Last Servants' Night didn't draw this many, did it? Meanwhile, Louise surveyed the area with a blank expression, thinking, How on earth did he manage this? That guy Cash really packed the square. Just then, the music began on stage, making Lucia even more jittery. Then a female host appeared, waving her arms, saying, Thank you, everyone. Lucia gazed at the stage, thinking, I never imagined this day would arrive. She turned to Luis, reflecting, If it weren't for Luis, I wouldn't have even dared to dream about today. On stage, the female MC handed over to the conductor. He announced, Yes. And next on the program, he cheerfully pointed at the audience. Are our remarkable contestants. Aren't they just great? That's right. It's Lucia and Luis. Let's give them a big round of applause. Hearing her introduction made Lucia extremely anxious and she started to breathe rapidly. Who's that? Luis's voice echoed, calming his sister. When Lucia heard him call, she looked down and stuttered. Luis. Seeing this, Louise turned and placed her hand on Lucia's, saying, Just getting this far is a win. Sister, don't run away from the painful memories anymore. She gazed down at him, astonished. Luis, for real. She continued. If our parents in heaven saw you unable to sing because of guilt, what would they say? Suddenly, Luis's words shocked Lucia, as she asked, What do you mean? Luis, how did you know? But he didn't respond. Instead, he grabbed his instrument and headed straight for the stage. Lucia called after him. Luis. He paused, looking back with a serious face and said, Listen and think, sister, about what your parents truly wanted. Lucia hesitated, contemplating. What did my parents want? After that, he stood at center stage with his instrument, ready to perform. As he did, the crowd below started to wonder. Huh? Is it just him singing alone today? Where's Lucia? Ignoring the spectators, he began to sing. Luis lost himself in the tune and sang. In the chilly winter, I drift off beneath a cozy blanket. In my dreams, I stroll across a snow-blanketed field. His voice rang out bright as a snowstorm swept down. The audience below was utterly amazed at his performance. Luis continued singing, enveloped in the melody as snow fluttered down like a gray blizzard. Luis kept singing as he walked, while snow fell like a gray blizzard. Hearing those words, the man in the crowd below suddenly started making a scene, his eyes wide in disbelief. Wait a second, isn't this the tune? A Child's Dream? I sang that so much with my folks when I was a kid. Another joined in. During the prelims, he belted out a tune we'd never heard before. But today, it's a song we all know. Someone else chimed in. Regardless, it's just magical to hear that boy sing. Another commented. Absolutely. It feels like being whisked away by some spell. On stage, Louise kept singing, conjuring up eerie sounds from the shadowy woods. The white-furred creature pursued her. Oh, this is terrifying. Mommy. Daddy. Please save me. Meanwhile, Lucia stood off to the side, clutching her instrument tightly. As Lucia listened to those lyrics, a rush of memories flooded her mind, recollections of her time with her parents. Suddenly, she thought, this is what Mom and Dad hoped for. Gradually, she made her way onto the stage, approaching Luis, and began to sing, tears rolling down her cheeks as each note reminded her of her parents. Look at the lovely baby wrapped in the blanket. Lucia sang through her tears. Our little one seems to be crying. Looks like they're trapped in a scary dream. Memories from her childhood, when her parents were still around, swirled through her mind. She used to sing like this, reassuringly. It's okay. It's okay. Mom and Dad are here. Dad will chase away the monster with his axe. The gentle smiles of her parents flooded Lucia's thoughts. It's all right. It's all right. Mom and Dad are right here. Mom will keep you close to her heart. Meanwhile, down below, Mona and the two kids, Khan and Kanye, were also watching. Captivated, Mona felt emotional and shouted, Lucia. Then she clasped her hands, gazing at Lucia on stage, recalling her chat with Luis about the lullaby our parents would sing to us when we were young. Why? At that moment, Luis replied, because I really want to sing it for someone. Returning from her memories, she covered her mouth as tears streamed down, whispering softly, that's why I asked you before. Lucia, thank you. On stage, Lucia continued her duet with Luis. My dear child, Mom and Dad will always be with you until the sun shines bright and the snow starts to melt. Their performance reached its finale, and Luis snapped his fingers gently. In a heartbeat, their act concluded. Lucia, her face glistening with sweat, was left speechless. Below, Key was lifted by his two bodyguards to watch, utterly moved as he applauded vigorously, tears flowing down his face, shouting, Incredible, absolutely incredible. Meanwhile, the crowd erupted in cheers, lost in excitement. It's the siren! The siren has returned. Lucia stood there, brimming with emotion, shedding tears as she bowed and said, thank you, thank you. Luis then crept down below, grinning and remarked, well, I suppose it all turned out happily in the end. With a beaming face, Luis said, if we want to maintain this wonderful vibe, we have to finish our remaining tasks. Right? At the port, a man named Jay Women was all alone, rowing his boat. Gradually approaching the pier, he halted the boat and surveyed the area with a cold stare. As he took just a few steps onto the shore, a voice called out, Where are you coming from? Sneaking about like a rat, Balo had been lurking there, waiting for him. When Jawan saw him, he was taken aback, totally not expecting Balo to be here at this hour. Balo eyed him with a smug grin and said, Now, did you just stash some treasures on that rocky island out there in the ocean? Upon hearing this, the man let out a deep sigh and coolly replied, It's pretty obvious that birds of a feather stick together. You've just pulled a move straight out of Miss Lucia's parents' playbook. Upon hearing that, Balo's expression shifted to shock. He snapped back. What? What in the world are you going on about? Why are you suddenly dragging my friends into this? The man responded with a smug grin. They trailed behind me just like Mr. Paby did until fate took a turn, and they regrettably passed on. Balo jabbed a finger at him, his voice shaking with fury as he demanded, "Don't tell me you had a hand in that tragedy?" The man chuckled wickedly and replied, "Who can say? It's quite the mystery." He continued with his self-satisfied smirk, "But mark my words, no one will meddle with my business." At this, Balo could no longer hold back his rage and grabbed his hammer. He lunged at the loathsome man and yelled, "You scoundrel!" Charging forward with eyes ablaze, Balo brought his hammer down hard. But the man parried the strike with his two swords. He spoke confidently. "Did you genuinely think I could take on Tuso empty-handed?" After he spoke, he pushed Balo away with ease. And in an instant, his subordinates emerged from all sides, surrounding Balo. Seeing his advantage, he sheathed his swords and arrogantly added, "Oh, by the way, you shouldn't fret about the two young ladies in Xi'an." He cackled maniacally and declared, "I'll keep them safe and sound." "Ha." Hearing those words only stoked the flames of Balo's fury, making him roar, "You scumbag. I'll make you pay." He was about to charge at him again, but his way was blocked by the subordinates. Noticing this, he snorted, "Get out of my face." Diamond now faced the sea, holding the cabinet in his grip, and remarked, "So, shall we press on? Shall we?" But suddenly, a voice called from behind, "Hey, are you lost, Mr.?" Luis, perched atop a barrel, replied, "The festival isn't here. It's happening at Flag Square." Don turned around. Surprised, he glanced over and said, "Wandering around this late at night might get you in trouble with the grown-ups, kid." Then Luis jumped down from the barrel and said, "Appreciate the heads up, mister, but my family is pretty chill, so I'm all good." He placed his hands behind his head and strolled toward Don, saying, "Anyway, I was planning to play nice." He gave a wink and continued, "But making my sister Lucia cry is a no-go. So I've got to teach you a lesson you won't soon forget." As Luis said that, the man immediately dismissed him with disdain, thinking Luis was just a little kid, and glared at him, saying, "You little punk. Who do you think you're flexing on?" Luis smirked back and said, "Well, fine. I wasn't going to go easy on you just because you're a kid. Anyway." With that, he quickly drew two swords from his hips and lunged to stab Luis. But just as swiftly, Luis conjured a spell, and a shimmering purple sphere enveloped him, preventing the man's swords from reaching him. The man froze in shock and stammered, "Spatial magic? You're a mage?" But Luis ignored his words, casually cleaning out his ear and saying, "So much chatter. Come on. Attack already." Before Don could even respond, Luis unleashed a punch with a fierce determination, adding, "If not, it's my shot next." Even though he crossed his arms to defend, the sheer power behind Luis's strike launched him back a significant distance, eventually crashing against a wall with a thud. Damon yelped in agony. "Ugh." Luis observed his quaking foe on the floor and smirked. "Oh, so you can still handle that? Guess you're tougher than Balo. Huh?" Meanwhile, Balo was busy with his lackeys. Upon hearing Luiso's words, Balo shot back. "You're making comparisons when the heat's on." Suddenly, an enormous shadow blotted out the sun. Luiso was taken aback. As he stood there frozen, he heard an ominous noise from just behind him. A colossal creature with a head resembling a blue dragon, a lengthy body, and razor-sharp horns emerged, its eyes glowing a menacing crimson. It rose from the sea, directly in front of Luiso. Spotting him, it let out a thunderous roar, baring its massive mouth and smashing its head down right where he had stood. But Luiso nimbly evaded the attack, stepping back and exclaiming, "Whoa, that was a close shave. I almost bit the dust." But when Luiso turned to face it, his expression turned to pure astonishment as the monster began to twist its entire form. It slithered up onto the shore, and there stood Diamond on its back, clutching a horn. With a self-satisfied smirk, he sneered, "This kid's clever, but this is as far as you go," he proclaimed smugly. "A bit ahead of schedule, but there's no going back now." Luiso gritted his teeth, hearing Duan's voice echoing, "First, I've got to handle you." He immediately raised the horn to his lips and blew with all his force to gain control over the sea beast. Instantly, a crimson aura radiated from him. Luiso could no longer afford to slack off and began channeling magic into both hands. As for the sea creature, despite hearing Down's horn, it didn't launch an attack. It simply focused its gaze intensely on Luiso. This unexpected behavior left Luiso astonished, bewildered by the development. "Huh?" Diamond's frustration grew as he recognized the monster's disobedience, and he angrily kicked the creature's side, shouting, "What are you doing just sitting there like a useless fish? Why aren't you attacking him?" After taking a hard kick and being yelled at, The beast shifted its blood-red gaze towards him and let out a fearsome growl. In the meantime, Luiso, watching this unfold, couldn't hide his delight. Thinking, aha, looks like he hasn't fully tamed it yet. Luiso grinned to himself, thinking, let me give you a hand with that. With that, he swiftly cast a mind control spell on the sea beast. Let me help you calm it. With that, Luiso instantly cast a mind control spell to tame the sea monster. Without delay, a stream of orange energy surged forth and connected with the creature, bound by Luiso's spell. It howled incessantly. Despite being hit by his magic, the monster appeared to maintain a sharp awareness. Pointing decisively at Daimon, Luiso commanded, devour him. Alarmed, Daimon shouted in horror. What? No way. You can't do that. He quickly brought the horn to his lips and blew once more with all his power. This time, the wave of energy he unleashed was significantly more potent, sending the monster into a frenzy. Now caught between two strong control spells, the creature roared in agony, slamming its head hard against the ground. Bam! The impact sent Luiso soaring onto a nearby crate where he surveyed the bustling scene on Monday. Luiso mused to himself, at this moment, my mental prowess isn't strong enough to counteract the Sea King's horn. Luis locked eyes with his adversary, his gaze resolute, and thought, but revealing my true form to battle it amidst the city, what's my play here? After pondering briefly, he scanned the ocean, and an idea flashed in his mind. He then exclaimed, aha, I think I've pinpointed the key factor, Luis declared. Exactly. That's a brilliant plan. Turning to face the colossal sea creature, he smirked and said, let's really throw down, what do you think? Upon finishing his words, Luis leaped high into the air and dove straight into the ocean. Ballo gasped in disbelief. What are you doing? Sir? Meanwhile, the monster, hearing Luis's challenge, let out a roar and promptly plunged into the sea in pursuit of him. Watching this unfold, Demon scoffed with glee. You idiot, challenging a sea serpent in the open ocean? That's essentially asking for trouble, isn't it? The beast sped towards Luis's location. At that precise moment, Luis was brimming with confidence, eagerly awaiting the monster's arrival. He thought resolutely, bring it on. Luis was taken aback. Holding his breath, he fixated on the approaching creature. The monster raced towards him with speed. It opened its gaping maw, brimming with rows of sharp teeth, and sucked Luis inside at lightning speed. It clamped its jaws shut, believing it fully had him. But merely seconds later, a burst of brilliant purple light erupted from within its mouth. Out of nowhere, an arm emerged. Lifting one of its jagged teeth, Luis transformed into a dragon, his expression darkening. With sheer strength, he pried the monster's mouth open. Though small in size, his power was immense. Luis scowled, his expression serious. He declared, if we're underwater, there's no need for restraint. I can fully unleash my dragon form. Luis tightened his fist, gathering his momentum, and stated, and this guy's mouth? With that, Luis delivered a crushing blow to the monster's upper jaw and quipped, that's rank. You ought to brush 3 times daily. Bubbles erupted within the creature's mouth from the impact. Taken aback by the hit, it howled in despair. Seizing the moment, Luis swiftly swam out of the monster's maw. He unfurled his wings, climbing into the sky, eyeing his foe as he taunted. Weren't you feeling pretty cocky a second ago, using his strength? He surged towards his opponent, shouting, tough luck running into me today. He then rocketed forward and unleashed a thunderous punch to the monster's head. Caught off guard, the beast bellowed in torment. Not resting a heartbeat, Luis swam around with agility, landing powerful strikes all over the creature. At this point, it could only brace itself for the beating, letting out feeble cries. Realizing it couldn't defend itself any longer, it tried to escape, but Luis swiftly pinned the monster down to the ocean floor. He growled in frustration. Yeah, but escaping isn't as easy as you think. Luis clung tightly to the monster's form and declared, where do you think you're heading off to? Luis asked as he pinned the creature's tail down with all his might and body. The fun is just getting started. It'd be a real bummer to wrap things up this early, don't you think? After saying that, he took hold of the monster's tail and began to whirl it around countless times, saying, let's keep this party going. Meanwhile, Ballo had already taken care of Don's goons and was standing there, out of breath. Puff. Puff. Looks like that's all of them. Huh? He then gazed worriedly at the ocean, adding, I hope the master is holding up, even if he's a dragon beneath the waves. Suddenly, ripples danced across the surface of the sea. Grabbing his attention, he murmured in surprise, what's that? In just a heartbeat, a whirlpool formed, its center a dark abyss. At that moment, a geyser of water began to ascend, crafting a real-life whirlpool soaring in the air. Ballo's eyes widened in shock as he exclaimed, what on earth is happening? As he was speaking, The whirlpool began to fade, unveiling the true form of the sea beast. Meanwhile, Diamond was equally taken aback by the sight. He shouted in disbelief. A sea serpent? Why? What's it doing up there? While he wrestled with his thoughts, the creature was already hovering above him, plummeting down. Realizing he was in serious trouble, he bolted, screaming at the top of his lungs. But, unfortunately for him, it appeared that fate had a way of catching up to those with wicked hearts. One foot stumbled over a stone, sending him tumbling to the ground. Daimon glanced back, but by then it was too late. He only had time to yell, "No! Stop!" A heartbeat later, the sea monster crashed down, crushing Daimon beneath its weight. With a resounding thud, the ground trembled, sending shards of earth and rocks flying. A cloud of dust and smoke enveloped the area, and his horn went soaring. It collided sharply with some nearby stones, causing it to fracture. The scene at the dock now resembled a war zone. The sea beast lay amid the ruins, with Duiman and his crew surrounded by swirling dust. The sight painted a picture of utter chaos. As for Balo, he remained frozen, his expression darkening as he tried to grasp what had just transpired. Suddenly, geysers of water erupted from the sea. Balo witnessed this and quickly shielded his face with his arms. From beneath the waves, Luis surfaced, his face stern against the backdrop of a full moon. With water droplets shimmering around him like a cloak of mystery, he quickly shifted back into his human form, flashing a warm grin. Luis landed effortlessly next to Balo. He shook off the water like a dog and said, "Ah, that feels refreshing. I hadn't had a proper release in ages. Finally got to let loose," Balo asked with a grave tone. "You pulled all that off just to unwind?" Suddenly, from the rubble mountain, pained groans of Diamond echoed. Yup. It turned out Diamond wasn't out for the count yet and was painstakingly crawling forward. His face twisted in agony as he searched through the debris, softly whimpering. Diamond reached out, desperately trying to grab onto his shattered horn, gasping, "My horn." Just then, Luis walked over and picked it up. He glanced at the guy and quipped, "Why are you still fixated on that Sea King's horn?" He then carried on with a smug grin. "This will come in handy for me now." With that, Luis raised the horn to his lips and gave a blow. But it only let out a sharp toot-toot sound, lacking any magical energy whatsoever. Balo, standing close by, couldn't hold back a chuckle and remarked, "Boss, you might excel at roughhousing, but it seems playing instruments isn't exactly your forte." "Is it?" teased. Luis shot back with a defensive tone. "It's not that I can't play it. It's just that this thing is—" Just then, he heard a series of cracking noises coming from the horn. As Luis grasped it with both hands, he felt a few more cracks before turning to Balo. They both exclaimed, "Well?" Then Luis flashed a smile at Balo and said, "Think we can just glue it back together?" Right after he finished his sentence, the horn shattered into countless shards, leaving them both in shock for a few seconds. Then, all the fragments plummeted and spread across the ground. Heartbroken over the loss, he knelt down, stared at the mess, and wailed, "Ah, no. My speedboat." While Luis wallowed in despair, suddenly dust and rocks flew up behind him again. The furious sea beast awakened. Its figure loomed large. Lucy turned his head, spotted it, and with a sly grin said, "Ah, we're in trouble." The monster promptly opened its enormous maw to pounce on Luis and Balo. It snarled with a mighty roar. They both screamed. "Run!" Balo shouted nervously. "What triggered its rage like this?" Luis replied, "The Sea King's horn is destroyed, so it's acting on raw instinct now." Luis instinctively looked back and muttered, "If this keeps up." But then, the sea monster halted its pursuit and instead veered towards the central square where the festival was happening. Seeing this, Luis exclaimed with unease, "Oh no." Luis, drenched in sweat, followed with, "Oh no. It's being lured by the dazzling lights of the festival and is headed straight for it." Balo inquired anxiously, "What? That's catastrophic." "There are so many people there." Luis clenched his teeth, desperate to devise a plan, and declared, "Oh no." He hurriedly commanded Phi, saying, "Phi, track down the twins and bring them here right now." Phi nodded in agreement. Luis pressed on. "In the meantime, Balo, you and I will take on this monster." Balo affirmed. "Yes, Master." The two bolted towards the beast. Luis yelled at Balo, "All right, let's move." Once they reached the scene, the monster was already in a rage, demolishing everything in its wake. Meanwhile, in the town, the townsfolk remained blissfully unaware of the disaster lurking ahead. In a dim alley, a young couple strolled, giggling and embracing. The blonde girl voiced her concern. "Honey, isn't it risky to wander into this dark alley at night?" Hearing this, the young man with black hair and a gold chain tried to play tough, replying, "What's so scary? I'm right here with you." As they continued their sweet moments, the guy stated, "I'm serious." Suddenly, a loud crash reverberated. The young man wondered, "Huh? What was that noise?" Just as he said that, a massive growl emanated from above, and the monster materialized before them. Its enormous mouth opened wide, utterly terrifying. The duo screamed. Upon seeing the creature, the young man stumbled backward, his eyes wide with shock as he yelled, What's that creature?" The blonde girl urgently pressed him. "Why are you just standing still? Run! Get up fast." With no options left, the blonde girl yanked him up and tossed him onto her shoulder, sprinting while glancing back. Just then, a colossal hammer zipped through the air toward them like a missile. Moments later, it slammed right into the monster's skull, making it bellow in agony with its jaws wide open. Balo's entire body shook slightly, but he stood firm, panting as he called, "Hey, snakehead, look over here." After taking a hefty hit from Balo, the monster's eyes lit up with rage. It unleashed a deep, furious roar, "Rah," and immediately lunged right at him. Balo, realizing this, ducked away, yelling as he bolted. He was intentionally grabbing its attention to guide the monster to a planned ambush spot. Then he spun around and shouted, "Master, it's time. I need saving here." A voice from Luis rang out. "Activate space magic. Create a spatial barrier." Instantly, 4 violet walls with rectangular designs sprang up, encircling the beast. The monster gazed around in disbelief. Feeling confined, it roared thunderously. It started to thrash violently, battering its head and tail against the barrier, howling, "Roar, roar, roar, roar." Meanwhile, Luis stood on a nearby rooftop, watching the monster. He remarked, "Fantastic. It's momentarily contained. Now, I just need to use a mental spell to calm it down, and we'll wrap this up." After speaking, Luis waved his hand at the monster and began to cast another spell. Luis closed his eyes and proclaimed, "Mental spell? Get a grip." The monster opened its mouth wide, roaring in distress. Ruir, but that spell from Luis only made it thrash even more desperately against the 4 violet spatial barriers encasing it. Meanwhile, Luis, eyes shut and sweating, wrestled with the spell, thinking, "I can't hold this. The spatial barrier is quaking. At this rate, I won't be able to successfully cast the mental spell." Balo, watching from below, suddenly heard someone shout, "Sir Balo." He turned. Startled, Baron Toe and his crew came rushing in, weapons drawn, ready to assist. But upon seeing the monster trapped in the purple barrier, raging like crazy, he gasped in surprise. "Goodness, what is that creature? Where did this monster come from?" Balo spun back and answered, "It's something a demon dragged in. Looks like he planned to stir things up during the festival." Baron Toe, taken aback once more, exclaimed, "What demon? Where's that scoundrel now?" Balo responded, "He slipped away amidst the chaos. But right now, we need to tackle that magical beast fast." Suddenly, Luis shouted in a frustrated tone, "Balo, how long are you going to keep chatting?" Luis continued in a strained voice, "You need to do something with your friend to hold off that monster." After hearing this, Balo quickly replied, Yes, I get it. Let's move." Toe. He then turned to Baron. Tao, Teso, flustered, replied, "Huh? Yes. Up above." Suddenly, the 2 kids, Connie and Khan, appeared behind Luis, shouting, "Luis, we're here to help." Seeing them, Luis turned and replied, "Awesome. While Balo gets ready, you 2 distract it." With excitement bubbling over, Connie and Khan chimed in, "Leave it to us." In unison, they brandished their swords and leaped off the rooftop, diving straight toward the beast to engage in battle. The twin sisters wielded the powers of lightning and thunder magic. They unleashed a dazzling display of lightning bolts, striking the monstrous foe. Observing their prowess, Luis figured, "It seems we can hold our ground for a bit longer." Just then, Balo's voice echoed from below, "Master, we're all set." The menacing sea creature turned its attention towards them, almost sensing their intentions, and abruptly coiled its tail to flee, slithering away like a slippery serpent. Spotting this, Balo, gripping the rope, yelled, "Now's our chance. Pull. Heave-ho." In an instant, a rope ensnared the monster's body. It struggled, shaking violently as it fought to break free, letting out thunderous roars. "Ruir, Ruir." Meanwhile, Teso and the others below heaved with determination. Teso motivating everyone, "Hold on tight, we cannot let go." Back with Luis, he suddenly soared high into the air. While airborne, he started his magical incantation. Focused and serious, he began casting a multi-layered spatial compression spell. A chunk of shimmering purple jade emerged, encased in a swirling blue energy aura. Moments later, he clapped his hands together, releasing beams of light. Louise thought. Compress space. Suddenly, kaboom! An enormous explosion rocked the monster's body, freezing it in its tracks. Following that, a shockwave slammed into the creature's head, which could only emit a cry before succumbing. Its two crimson eyes began to droop. Then, Luiso approached the vanquished beast and placed a gentle hand on its forehead. Luiso cheerfully asserted, "You all did great. Let me help it find peace." With that, he started casting a soothing mind spell, and lights began shimmering above the monster's head. Moments later, its eyes fluttered open, revealing not the terrifying, bloodshot red, but a refreshing, sparkling blue. The monster's gaze softened as it recognized Luiso standing there. Slowly, it edged closer, prompting Luiso to chuckle. "Aha, that's it, good boy." The creature affectionately licked Luiso's face with its lengthy tongue. Suddenly, Thor stepped forward with a cold demeanor. Thyre advanced slowly, sword raised, bellowing, "Die!" But at that moment, Thor was ensnared by a spell, chains binding his hands to halt his attack. Surprised, he exclaimed, "Huh? What's happening?" Luiso looked at him calmly and explained, "There's no need for that," he clarified. "It was under Don's control, so it's not to blame." As soon as Luis finished, the mischievous kids, Ka, Ni, and Khan, jumped onto the monster's back, bouncing up and down with glee. Baron Tuo, observing the scene, still expressed concern, but letting a monster like this wander free, to which Luiso replied, "I'll handle it. No worries." Sometime later, the monster returned to the ocean, bowing its head in acknowledgement. Luiso advised, "You understand? From now on, steer clear of the human city, and return to your home. Stay there." Watching the scene unfold, he felt nervous and said, "But letting a monster like this roam free." Luiso interjected, "I've got this. No worries." After a while, the monster returned to its ocean. It bowed its head. Attentive, Luiso declared, "You get it? From now on, steer clear of the human city. Return to your home and stay put." With an eager cry, the sea monster obediently complied, turning away to swim deeper into the ocean. The two energetic kids were waving their hands excitedly. Khan exclaimed, "Live a good life," Ki chimed in, "and steer clear of any more wicked old men." After that, Luiso rose to his feet, declaring, "All right then, we should prepare ourselves too." As soon as Luiso mentioned that, the two kids looked at each other, puzzled, asking, "Prepare for what?" Luiso turned with a cheerful grin, replying, "Now that the task is complete, we need to leave as well." Out in the vast sea, Don was alone on a tiny boat. He paddled angrily, muttering, "Darn it. Diamond, refused to go down like this." His eyes blazed with anger as he growled, "I will take revenge on those who did this to me, even if it means turning all of Luthien into ashes." While he vented, suddenly, Diamond's boat began to rise slowly. He screamed in surprise. "What the heck? What's going on?" The sea monster had emerged, staring directly at Diamond. Without giving him a chance to react, the creature grabbed a corner of his coat and hoisted him up. Diamond yelled, "Ah!" A moment later, the sea monster flung him into the air with force. Beneath the crashing waves, the monster's mouth gaped wide. Ready? Don plummeted downward, panic surging through him. He screamed uncontrollably, "No! This can't be true! No!" The sea monster leaped high. In one swift bite and gulp, he found himself swallowed whole. His horrified screams echoed. "No!" After exacting its revenge, the sea monster dove deep, leaving behind just the coat of a ruthless and wicked man sinking into the sea. After an electrifying performance, Lucia stepped off the stage, her heart racing. She squeezed her eyes shut, let out a hefty sigh, and remarked, "4 more songs to go. I'm utterly spent." Glancing around, she realized Luis was nowhere to be found. Confused, Lucia wondered, where on earth is Luis? He had vanished right after the first song. Just then, a boisterous voice called out from behind. Moner leaped to hug Lucia, exclaiming, "There's our mermaid, shining like a star. You were phenomenal. Totally amazing." Moner's eyes welled with tears as she whispered, "If Mom and Dad could have caught today's show, they would be incredibly proud." Lucia felt equally touched, softly calling, "Sister." Just then, a cough from behind caught Moner's ear. She suspiciously inquired, "Kaji, what are you doing here?" Kaji stiffened, stumbling over his words. Well, you see." He was concealing a beautiful bouquet of fresh flowers behind him. One glance at Kaji, and Moner understood his intentions. She quickly moved closer to him, nudging the moment forward with Lucia. "Lucia, looks like Kaji has a gift for you." Moner urged Kaji on. Come on, give it to her. Flowers are perfect for moments like this. Kaji's face flushed a deep shade of red as he gulped, gathering courage to say, Congratulations on your triumphant return to the stage, our mermaid, Lucia. Staring at the fresh blooms in her hands, Lucia was momentarily awestruck. She graciously accepted the flowers, inhaling their sweet scent, and expressed her gratitude. Thank you so much. Kaji bashfully scratched his head, fidgeting a bit. From a hidden spot far away, Luis had witnessed every moment unfold. He chuckled. What a charming scene this is. He let out a happy sigh and said, Looks like you've got this without me now. Huh. A few days later, aboard a ship. Letting out a pleased sigh, he said, You can manage just fine without me now. Right? Days later, aboard a ship, a soldier stood tall and declared, The Haine Sunny, heading to the autumn continent, is set to depart soon. Hurry up. All passengers. Get on board quickly, Moner cried, trying to hold them back. Please don't go, she added, her voice wavering with tears. Do my little ones really have to leave? Please don't go. Can't you stick around and be my siblings? Kaji chuckled merrily while Khan gently reminded her. Sister, that tickles. In a corner, Balo sulked, saying pitifully, Hey, I'm leaving too. Moner's mood shifted completely as she snapped. It doesn't matter whether you leave. Old man, all you ever do is guzzle liquor. Balo quickly defended himself. Come on. Those were all crucial party meetings. Moner became even more furious. You dare try to defend yourself? Suddenly, a soft voice called from behind. Louis? Lucia looked sorrowful as she inquired. You will return, right? Louise found it difficult to respond. Mumbling, about that. Moner, overwhelmed with emotion, clutched Luis's hand tight and insisted. Luis, you absolutely must come back. Understood? He reluctantly nodded. Yes. Sometimes, awkwardly added, Well, if I get a chance, I'll swing by. Just as Luis was about to leave, he found Lucia's warm embrace wrapping around him. Holding him tightly, unwilling to let him go, tears rolled down Lucia's cheeks as she whispered softly, You have to come back. Got it? Luis gently squeezed her hand, offering comfort. I'll remember. Sister Lucia, I certainly will. Before he could finish, he felt Kaji's piercing gaze burning into him. Luis felt a playful impulse to tease. Ah, look at you. Sister Lucia's heart. How sweet. Kaji was fuming. Growling. You jerk. He immediately pushed a glowing treasure into Luis's hands. Upon glimpsing the item inside the box, Luis exclaimed, Oh, a mermaid's tear. Kaji, shy, though being nice, attempted to keep his cool, as he stated. I'm only giving this to you because you kept your promise. You made Sister Lucia sing again. Speaking of which, picking up the dazzling ring to admire it, Luis asked. What's this? Kaji quickly elaborated. If you ever return, use that ring. It bears my family's crest. So you'll receive assistance anywhere. In Lufanon, Luis realized what that signified. Essentially, it was a free pass in Lufanon. Right? How neat. Kaji, soft-hearted but sharp-tongued, attempted to act displeased with Luis. But I hope you don't return. Got it? He didn't miss the chance to tease one last time. Kaji, don't pull any strange stunts, okay? Just do what I told you. Fearing his secret might slip, Kaji scolded in frustration. Shut it. I'll take care of everything. So, mind your own business. Luis noticed his trembling hand, shaking incessantly as he tried to conceal his sorrow, which surprised him. At last, he managed to voice his heartfelt gratitude. Thank you for everything. His subordinate reminded him, You need to be more sincere. Sir, Kaji, blushing with rage, yelled, Shut your mouth. Witnessing this, Luis couldn't help but feel amused. This kid is actually kind of adorable, he joyfully remarked. Around the same time, Count Tuzer arrived. He chimed in. Sir Balo, are you ready to leave? Balo quickly replied. Oh, Tuzer, is the port repair work going smoothly? Tuzer responded. The damage was significant, but thankfully, no lives were lost. Given the circumstances, that's quite a good turn of events. He shifted his focus to Luis and added, But that kid clearly isn't just an average person. A flashback hit Tuzer, recalling how he effortlessly took down that gigantic sea worm. An average Joe wouldn't manage something like that. Balo scratched his nose, putting on an innocent act. Huh? What are you going on about? That's merely my nephew. Tuzer, catching on to the vibe, smiled and said, I get it. You two are just family from afar. I'll keep your nephew's secret safe. Count on me. Balo nodded enthusiastically. Absolutely. Thanks a ton. I owe you big time again. After a heartfelt farewell, Louisa and her crew hopped onto the ship for their return journey. Mona waved a bittersweet goodbye. So long, my little adventurers. Lucia was no less teary-eyed. You must come back. You hear? Louise felt immensely grateful and shouted back. Farewell, Sister Mona. Sister Lucia, I had an amazing time with all of you. The sky stretched out, bright and blue, while the ship cruised gently across the waves. Suddenly, Nani recalled something urgent and asked, but where are we actually headed now? Louise exhaled in frustration and said, You're only asking now. Huh? Louise laid out their strategy. We're bound for Port Dotman on the autumn continent. Then we'll trek across the land. Louise turned to Balo and asked, How long do you think it'll take to reach Port Dotman from here? Balo remained quiet, puzzled. Louise approached him. Hey, what are you up to over there? Why the silence? Before he could finish, he caught sight of Balo's pale, seasick face, looking like he was on the brink of disaster. Louise exclaimed, What's going on? Please tell me you're not feeling seasick. Balo spoke weakly. Master. He couldn't complete his thought. He was too busy about to lose last night's dinner onto the deck. Witnessing this, Louise could only shake his head in frustration and remark, With a frame that large, you can't even cruise on the sea without turning green. He rolled his eyes at the annoyance. Then, Louise placed a comforting hand on Balo's back. He began weaving a calming sleep spell. Balo couldn't resist the magic. His eyelids grew heavy as sleep took hold. After successfully lulling Balo into a deep slumber, Louise, Connie, and Khan resumed their exploration. He commented, He should be out for a few hours now and feel just fine when he's up. Let's check out the cabins, Connie instantly, cheerfully replied. Let's do it. One was bubbly. The other, sluggish, a real juxtaposition. Just then, a mysterious figure slid in behind Balo. The stranger's voice echoed out, This dude has to be at least a level 3, yet was knocked out so easily. The figure clicked their tongue, clearly astonished. An old man with flowing white hair emerged, draped in a long cloak. He gazed at Louise, then proclaimed, Looks like this lengthy sea journey is set to become quite intriguing, and that's all for now. Folks, if you want to stick around for the next episode, then smash that subscribe button. And while you're at it, give that like button a good whack, too. Thanks for watching all the way through. Thanks for sticking around to the very end.